Right, I think we're going to get started. If you're here, you're here. And if you're not, you're missing out on our webinar today, Power Up Your Bottom Line, How to Boost EV Charging Network Profitability in a Grid-Constrained World. And I'd really like to welcome you all. So to get started, we see that like the EV revolution, EV charging is coming of age. In many markets, the number of chargers is growing, with forecasts essentially making charging available to anyone who needs it within the next few years, certainly in the leading markets. But we're still only at the beginning, and we're seeing charging networks are still struggling with the profitability. Of course, we all realize if we could have our chargers busy 24/7, everyone in this virtual room would be smiling. But I think that part of the reason you're here is that the reality is it's a bit different. And charging networks are looking for ways to improve their bottom line. And smart energy management is right here, stepping up to the challenge. In today's webinar, we'll have Gal Guterman, who's going to go into some market forces, dig into some of the challenges network operators are facing with profitability today, and why smart energy management has got to be at least part of the solution. After him, Avram Edelstein will show some concrete examples using different site configurations, regardless of which CPMS you're using to improve your profitability. And then we're going to jump back to Gal, who's going to show how could we do without it, how AI is helping there. And I, of course, will be in the background managing the mechanics of the webinar. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So your microphones are muted and cameras are off, but reactions are on, and we'd be happy to get your reactions during the webinar. We will have some polls in the course of the webinar, so keep your eyes open for those. And there should be some time for a Q&A at the end. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Gal. Please go ahead and take it away.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you very much, Rami. And thank you everyone for joining. I'd like to explain a bit about Driivz before we dive into the details of how we think our EMS can give you more value. We'd like to share a bit about where we're coming and what Driivz is doing. So if you don't know us, Driivz is one of the leading charge point management systems worldwide. We provide services both to public charging operators and to fleet operators. These are some of our trusted partners. So you can see we're active in almost every continent. And I'd like to share a few numbers. So as you can see here, we just concluded the 2025, and looking back on last year, we've seen 45 million transactions in our system in over 150,000 charge points. And looking into different settings of the system, so we see operators with a lot of OCPI connections, more than 5 million drivers in our system. So really operating in scale in more than 30 countries worldwide. And on a larger scale, we're part of the Volunteer ecosystem. So Volunteer is a US-based company that provides critical technology and solutions for the mobility ecosystem, both around EV charging, but also around just enabling the movement of people and goods globally. So before we dive into how we think our EMS can deliver value for you, we'd like to explain about what we think it matters right now, why we think that EMS went from a nice to have to a strategic imperative in the last 12 months. So I'd like to cover here 3 market forces that are converging. And I'm not talking about prediction or trends that we think might happen. Everything that you'll see here is taken from market trends that are happening already today. These are forces that are driving our business now. So the first one is battery economics. In Bloomberg's paper from just last month, we've seen a drop in as 45% of sale prices of stationary batteries in last year. It means that if you've looked into the ROI of a stationary battery in the beginning of 2025 versus the end of 2025, the ROI has dropped from 6-7 years to 3-4 years. That's a staggering number. Actually, for the first time ever, stationary batteries are now cheaper than EV batteries. The second one, and I think you're all aware of this, is that the grid is scaling slowly. In the IEA report from 2025, the analysis shows that the time to connect a EV charging site to the grid has increased from 6 months to 2 years. That's almost triple. And looking on Netherlands only, there are more than 10K charging sites that are waiting to be connected to the grid. So if you've already ordered chargers and you're waiting to be connected, what are you supposed to do? The last one is the regulators really pushing for both megawatt charging and also flexible grid connections. So in December 10th, 2025, just a few weeks ago, the European Commission published a grid connection guidance that really fundamentally changes the way economics of EMS and deployments are being planned. And it means that co-located batteries plus charging gets priority grid access as a grid-friendly use versus normal charging. It means that if operator A wants to install 20 chargers and operator B wants to install 20 chargers plus a battery, operator B jumps in the queue, gets priority access. Basically, taking these three market forces into account, it means that the EMS brings not only capabilities for you, but it brings business opportunities. And if we look on the past 2 years here in the Driivz EMS, we've seen both immense growth in the services that we provide, and like we've just mentioned, great growth in the business opportunities that lies ahead. So let's make it a bit more practical. We in Driivz provide EMS for many use cases. Basically, we can divide it into two very major groups. One is a scalable cloud-based solution that can connect with OCPP to any charging site that you have that is operating with OCPP. And additionally, if you have additional energy assets on site, a local controller can be installed and connect to these energy assets. This is an example of a cloud-based solution EMS. As you can see here, the Driivz EMS is connected via OCPP to the chargers, and it can also connect to DSOs, providing flexible grid connections with OpenADR, or connect to external meters if these meters can be connected via MQTT or other protocols. Alternatively, if you have additional energy assets on site, like a battery or photovoltaic system, you can install a local controller. Either you have one installed and we can connect to it, or we can send you a local controller that you can install, and that local controller will be connected to our EMS. And again, it can provide additional business opportunities with connecting to DSOs via OpenADR, or if you have balancing services like ancillary markets, then we can also connect to that depending on your balancing service provider. And just to make sure that it's clear, even though that Driivz is a CPMS, we can also connect to any CPMS with our EMS. So either you want to install a cloud-based solution using your CPMS or connect to a local controller without changing a CPMS, that's also possible. So I'd like to explain more about the business opportunities and to invite you to redefine how you evaluate energy profitability with our EMS. An EMS that not only enables growth under any grid constraint, it also provides greater value and greater profitability for you and your businesses. So Even though that EV business is booming and sales are increasing year after year and expected to even double then in less than 5 years, it's not only good news. Even though we see demand for EV charging surging, profitability for charge point operators is not guaranteed. And like we covered, it gets harder and harder to scale your business in the grid ecosystem. So to understand more about the business opportunities, we'll try to simplify the business model just a bit. And if we try to simplify it, it's a business model of an energy company. You try to sell as many kilowatt hours possible and to maximize your profit per kilowatt hour. And how you maximize the profit? It's pretty simple. You either increase the margin by increasing the revenue or reducing the operating costs. And to make it more practical, we'd like to establish this new KPI, profit per kilowatt hour, and to map the opportunities, the actual opportunities with the Driivz EMS. So if there is one important rule that we've seen from different CPOs worldwide, is that if you have an EV charging site that is operating well and there's probably a queue of drivers that want to charge, you want to install more chargers over there and to maximize the grid connection without upgrading it. So already today, you can install the Driivz EMS, install more chargers, and maximize that grid connection, provide more services, sell more kilowatt hours without upgrading the grid connection. Second option is to start integrating into additional services. Either if you have a battery, you can integrate into ancillary markets or provide additional services to the grid, or even without a battery. If you have capacity markets available in your sites like nodes or switch, you can connect with our EMS to that market and generate additional revenue from the same EV charging site, not from charging, but from providing services to the grid. And the last option, which is also important, is how you reduce your operating costs. So I'd like to cover this in just a bit and explain more. And another good example of how you can utilize Driivz as a CSMS and an EMS is maximizing the revenue with dynamic pricing capabilities that can generate different prices per site to maximize their revenue, while you control your grid cost with the EMS. And it's a very good example of how you can maximize the profit with like a pincer movement with the Driivz EMS. So again, we'd like to keep it practical and to discuss how the EMS delivers value for you. And I'd like to explain how the system is built. So the first important part of the EMS is the system reliability. Basically trying to ensure a bulletproof operation with your EV charging site without any breaker trips. So we measure our breaker trips and minimize that for any setup. And then on top of that, we start bringing value, load balancing capabilities, reducing the cost. So whether you're operating a public charging site or a fleet setup, there are different priority mechanisms that basically maximize the kilowatt hours delivered to the target, whether it's making the drivers charge as fast as possible or optimizing it for a longer dwell for the EV charging to make sure that you reduce the cost while you do that. And then on top of that, there is an option to integrate additional energy assets. So if you have a battery energy storage system, or you have an unmanaged load on site, a solar photovoltaic system, or any renewable generation, you can install the local controller and make sure that the EV site is operating with your additional energy assets. And if energy assets can provide additional services in the area that you're in, these services will be provided with our EMS. I'd like to explain more about the beauty of reducing cost with our EMS. So basically, if we think about the profit, reducing cost, like the example here, is like patching a hole in your bucket. Every drop that you save stays inside. $1 cost reduction is a $1 profit increase. So where do you start from when you think about how to reduce the cost with the EMS? Like you can see here, it's the electricity bill. Basically, between 40 to 60% of a charge point operating costs are generated by the electricity bill. And if we continue to break it down, we can see that the power fee, the demand charges, the tariff that is applied according to the highest measured average demand in a certain time frame. It can be a 60-minute time frame. It can be a 15-minute time frame, depending on your geography. There is a very significant part of the bill that is dependent on this power fee. There are users here from all around the globe, but as we see the energy market evolving, this demand charges or capacity tariff are being applied in more and more countries. And we see a very big opportunity for you as charge point operators to start controlling your cost and maximize the profit with our EMS. So I'd like to hand it over to Avram to explain more about how exactly this is done.
So just before we give Avram the stage, I'm popping up a poll for you all to answer right now. And the question is, do you know how much you're paying for your demand charges today? Now, if any of you are not seeing the poll, there are some corporate policies that prevent them from popping up on your Teams window. You might be able to see them in the chat window if you're having trouble, so you could give that a go. But let's give everybody a minute or so to just answer this question. We're looking forward to your responses here. And looks like it's pretty close between, nope, the no's have just taken over. It was pretty close for a while. And so it looks like we have pretty much an even spread between companies that know how much they're paying and are trying to reduce them, and companies that actually don't know how much they're paying for demand charges. So at least half of you have a lot to learn from Avram's upcoming presentation. And let's hand it over to you right now, Avram. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Gal. Thank you, Rami. Now that we understood that actually electricity cost is the most significant driver of operating expenses, let's actually have a look on how different cases can increase your profitability. So this is a representative site. Let's start really with unmanaged load or balanced local energy consumption. When you do have that case, basically with an EMS, you can allocate the kilowatt or the power towards the chargers and provide more services or more power availability towards your users. The second one would be local energy generation. So not just that it's the cleaner option, but also often the most economical one to provide energy to the users. The other one is a time of use optimization. Basically, it's shifting loads towards periods whenever it allows. So whenever we've got high prices and low prices, we want to push the load into the low prices. The next one is battery integration. As Gal mentioned, that's becoming a more and more attractive case. And when we are actually installing a battery in the site, it's bringing us more flexibility and power availability towards our users. Once we introduce the battery, it's opened up opportunities for grid services such as demand response and ancillary services, which we'll explain later exactly how it works and the mechanics of that. And last but not least is the dynamic peak shaving, which we just discovered that 50% of you do not know exactly how much they are paying, and that's really, really important to keep the profitability. So let's start to cover the cases. So the first one would be time of use. It's simple, but sometimes can be very powerful. So basically we have the same charge or the same sessions. We're getting the same kilowatt hour, but different amount of money, just a different time of the day. So let's see how it works. We've got this kind of pattern that repeating itself eventually in the last years that we see during the evening time, high prices, right? So in some cases, we can actually push the charging into different hours, and then we can benefit out of that. So we're pushing that to a lower cost periods, and we're adjusting the grid limit to avoid charging during that hour. The energy difference, the price energy difference sometimes seems to be negligible. It could be low as even, this is the difference. It could be low as even 0.2 euros, and it seems that it's nothing. But if we are concluding everything and taking in consideration that consumption is around 200 kilowatt hours, then every night could be a savings of 40 euros, and over a month's time, more than 1,000 euros for this specific site. And that's becoming significant. So that's time of use. Now, the next topic will be the demand charges. So let's learn how powerful 15 minutes could be for your network. So out of 43,000 minutes in a month, typically just 15 will dictate your monthly demand charge bill. So you can think on a demand charge really as a buoy in the ocean. Every time a big wave hits, the buoy rises and the highest point is being marked, just like that. And the demand charge are a buoy in that sense. Basically, it's measuring the highest wave your site creates on the grid. And the utility remembers that wave and bills you to keep the system ready to supply it. So different to the buoy in the ocean, on the demand charge, we can have control. Let's see exactly how it works. So demand charge are based on interval data, usually 15 minutes, and as Gal mentioned, it could be in some regions 30 minutes or even 60, but the concept is the same. Each interval is actually measuring the accumulation of energy, and the highest one is the one that it remembers. So it's not about a momentary peak, rather demand within an interval period of time. So in this example, we can see that the third quarter is the highest wave, if you wish, or the highest peak. And basically, that's the one that the grid will remember in our monthly bill. So the rest of the times here, guess what? You are paying for something that you are not basically utilizing, and that's cost lots of money. If we look over a month's time, so there are 2,880 intervals if it's a 15 minutes interval data. And basically, you can see that during a month's time, there is lots of variations. Could be that there are different weather, events in the area, weekdays, weekends. So it changes pretty rapidly, and the consumption variation might be very, very high. So in this case, we see that there is one specific interval that stands high, and we would like to flatten or level this interval. So this is the highest peak. We would like, maybe if we're not that aggressive, to flatten that by 100 kilowatts, right? So 100 kilowatts in some of the sites is actually not that high. It could be even more aggressive. And in this case, you can imagine that we reduce it by 100 kilowatts. It could be that at that point alone, we just earned 15 euros by selling energy, but paid for demand charges maybe 1,000 euros. It depends on your demand charge fee in this specific region, but it doesn't make any sense to provide that service and that specific interval that will cost you that much. Now let's do the math really. We've got in this region, and that's where representative value could be a little less or more, 10 euros per kilowatt. Now, as we've seen, we can reduce in many sites 100 kilowatt, which will just flatten it and would not harm the user experience, or just by a few transactions. Then the saving is 1,000 euros per month. If we're looking on a yearly savings, that translates to 12,000 euros. And then multiply that by 100 sites, and we've got over $1 million of profit into the bottom line. Now, as Gal mentioned, we can now look further into ROI around batteries. That actually can be your energy wallet in the world of electrification. As we mentioned, in recent years, we've seen major drop in BESS system cost. So this is actually making storage not just a technical decision, but also a financial one. And it's make the business case more and more attractive. We can see that last year we've seen an actual purchase of systems around $108 per kilowatt hour. So that's actually really low and make really the ROI attractive for CPOs. Behind the meter strategies that we are doing with the battery system, just them alone can justify battery installation. In this example, resulting about 7,000 euros, that's specifically in Sweden, and that's compensate for demand charge and storing the energy on low prices and discharge it on high prices, and unlocking ability to sell energy above what we could before the installation, right? Adding to that, complementary services, like Gal mentioned, as nodes, demand response program. In this example, we're really proud to promote this kind of programs as it's increased profitability for our clients, and that's why we're happy to integrate with programs like that and many more. The other option to provide services to the grid is around ancillary services. So to those of you that are not familiar with that topic, here's a short explanation. The grid system needs to be balanced, and that means signal of 50 Hertz, frequency of 50 Hertz. Once we have more loads on the grid, the frequency is going down, and in some cases need some assistance to bring it back into balance. In this case, it's called upwards regulation, where the battery will discharge really to increase production. Okay. On the other hand, when consumers are going down and the production keep going, frequency is going up and looking for some more loads. This is downwards regulation, where the battery open up its gate and basically charging. And by that way, we are assisting the grid operator to keep the system in balance. And flexibility is here to stay, actually. As long as our resources are dependent on weather, we will see that flexibility cases are here and they are not going anywhere. Actually, we'll just see that curve in a severe way. And that's also the reason for negative prices that we see during summertime in some of the regions. In this famous curve, which called the duck curve, we can see basically that during the activity of solar system, actually, production is going higher, and that is the reason for the imbalance during the middle of the day, and during the evening time, actually, it's becoming more and more difficult to compensate for that. Once we've got batteries and we've got these different opportunities, basically we can assist the grid in two ways. One is demand response programs, which is assisting local congestion issues and capacity. And the other one is ancillary services, like we just mentioned. So this is nice. And the thing that many of these cases can complement each other. And what the EMS is aiming to do is to keep your asset busy during the day. So here you can see different colors representing different activities over the day, according to prices, according to availability of different programs, and according to your site's needs. So then the beauty about that all of that can be stacked together. So now that we've analyzed and we understood all the programs that's out there, let's have a look on some ROI calculation. So annual revenue from battery, as we've seen before, could reach to 80, 90,000 euros per year, with a blend of services as we've seen here. Now, with the prices that we have shown, the battery cost is less than 200,000 euros. And actually, even if you cannot reach that price point, it would not be a lot above that. It will be under the $200 per kilowatt hour. So it really depends on your purchasing volume and efforts, but the payback period would be around 2 to 4 years, which make the business case attractive enough. So after we've seen all of that, the question is, where should we start and actually start saving? So this is really our suggestion. First, we would like to see what might impact the overall network, right? And that would be the demand charge mitigation and the time of use. We should analyze the sites, and without further additional capex, we can just improve the activity of those sites, and that would be the highest impact of your network. Then, as we just mentioned, battery is becoming more and more attractive these days, and you should consider that to solve specific issues with specific sites. And then once you got into battery installations, you should consider ancillary services and grid services programs. But probably that would not be the first thing to start with. Now with that, I would like to hand over back to Gal to show you a short demonstration.
So just before we go back to Gal, I think it's time for our second poll, and I'll be popping that up for you right now. And if before we saw that about half of you know about your demand charges and are trying to reduce them, and the other half aren't quite sure of that. So now we want to know, do you know what most limits the profitability of your EV charging sites? That's what our webinar is all about today. Is it about charger utilization, energy costs, and those demand charges we answered before, grid capacity constraints, or is it operational complexity as your sites scale? Or do you even have visibility into the profitability of your sites? And if there's something else, then please go ahead and put it in the chat window. So why don't you go ahead and answer that poll real quick, and we'll be able to move on to Gal's demo. And let's see, we've got answers coming in. So it looks like it's all about charger utilization. But as we've been seeing in the last few slides, reducing your energy costs could make a difference there. It's not necessarily all about charger utilization. Yeah, okay, so it looks like we've stabilized on charger utilization being the most limiting factor, and energy costs and demand charges being number 2. So yeah, Gal, why don't you take it away and go ahead with your demo now.
Thank you very much, Rami and Avram. So now to wrap it up, we'd like to share an analysis, a type of analysis that we're doing with our operators. And we're really proud to say that we're trying to be proactive and to identify the opportunities for our business partners to improve their profitability, because we completely understand that their success is our success. And we've approached many of our operators in the past years, trying to identify the business opportunities for them to increase profitability with our EMS. So now with the generative AI, there is unlimited capabilities to provide more and more solutions. What we're doing with our operators is just taking all of the data that we have already due to OCPP in our system, and we're analyzing the behavior of their portfolio. And this is an example of a representative portfolio of, let's say, 9 sites. Let's say these 9 sites are in Norway. So we analyze what is the average energy price in that area during that time. What is the average revenue from a transaction? And what is the cost that is paid due to demand charges? And per site, we can easily understand how much this operator is paying for demand charges, how much they're paying for the energy, and how much they're actually making from that energy. So on the top, you can see a few metrics, just a total revenue estimation. And you can see here, we've applied some optimization function. So the number that you see in gray below is the estimated revenue, and this is the optimized revenue. So as you can see, if we apply some control on demand charges, there might be some revenue impact, but the total cost of energy and demand charges is reduced significantly. Basically, changing the profitability from a negative profitability before optimization to a significant increased profitability with the optimization. And this is an analysis of 9 sites in 1 month. But if you, like Avram just showed the numbers before, if you multiply that by a portfolio of 100 sites or even more, and by a year, that's a very significant profit increase. And everybody today is talking about profitability as the business matures and as the industry matures. And we truly believe that our EMS can help you increase your profitability. I'd like to show an example of a specific site. Let's take this site that shows a very significant demand charges saving profitability option. So as you can see here, there are over 200 transactions in this site, which are causing a very, very high demand charges. This is assuming around 10 euro per kilowatt demand charges. So what we can see here is during that site operation in a certain month, there are a few very distinct peaks in the site consumption, which are causing this high demand charges. But actually, the energy that the drivers that are connecting and are paying to that charge point operator are not enough to cover all these demand charges. And for that side, there is a very significant demand charges saving that can be applied. We're doing this process with all of our partners and identifying the opportunities for them. And this is one option as shown, and there are additional options like we've mentioned during this webinar. So I hope we provided some practical tools to explain why we think EMS is important now and how we think it can improve your profitability. And we'd be more than happy to explain more in a follow-up session with any one of you who would be interested.
That's great. Thank you, Gal. So essentially, this does bring us to the end of the webinar, and we do have some time for Q&A. If you'd like to pop any questions into the Q&A window, I'll be scanning the chat window too, if any of you prefer that. There is already one question I can pose. So before Gal mentioned that we can connect up to third-party CPMSs, and the question is, how do we do that? How do we connect to chargers for energy management when the site is using a different CPMS? Which one of you wants to take that one?
I'll take that one.
Okay, Avram, it's all yours.
Yeah. All right. So we do offer our EMS to different CPMS, and we've actually got now more and more clients interested in these features. 2 options exist. One is maybe I'll share a slide on that. Let me cover that in a slide. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually one option, is to connect to chargers via Modbus. I recommend actually and suggest to all of you that planning new sites to consider this protocol as part of the EVSE that you are planning to purchase, as that will provide you more opportunities or more options to control your site, and not just via OCPP. That goes in parallel to OCPP. So basically you will control the chargers locally, and the rest of the data will go over OCPP to your CPMS provider. Additional option is basically to use Driivz as a proxy server. In that way, we would be able to mask the energy, the smart energy profiles, basically, and control the limitation of the chargers, while the rest of the communication will go to the CPMS as originally planned. Yeah.
Great. So we have another question here. Connor is asking, what protocols does the EMS controller board support to interface with the BESS, EV chargers, etc.? What are the protocols?
Right. So usually when a project with BESS is starting, it will be recommended that there will be a local controller over there. In terms of response time, the communication to the BESS would be over Modbus as well. And then it really depends on the site, the EVSE selection. Then it can be either over OCPP or a Modbus to the chargers as well. And it depends on the different meters, but usually it will be also a local connection of Modbus. So if you want a faster response time, basically the local controller will support it through Modbus communication. Is that clear?
Yeah, that sounded pretty clear to me. Any more questions? We do have some time. And I don't see any more questions in the chat window. Last chance for Q&A. Here we go. So we do have a question about BESS and V2G. Can I merge the BESS and vehicle-to-grid V2G for the same features?
Right. So actually, yes, we're planning everything as a future-proof features, meaning that all the negative limits can be applicable for chargers as well if the hardware will support it. And we do have two actually pilots today that demonstrating those. So very good question, and yes.
Okay, so we have a lot of positive responses today. And then we have another question about asking, wait, let me find that. Here it's in the chat window. Yeah, so the question is, does the EMS support control such as load shedding for a site?
If I understand, load shedding is part of what we have shown here in the presentation. So basically, there are two types that we will support. One is just with the chargers, where we're pushing the chargers into the lower cost areas. And the other one is with the battery, of course, where it's called energy shifting or basically peak shaving, and then we will charge during the battery during lower cost times, and we'll discharge that towards our users at higher cost times.
Okay, so people are getting into it now. There are more questions, and now we have a compare and contrast question. And the question is, how different are the utility programs in the EU compared to those in the US? How are they different, and what are the parallels? How are they the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. It really depends. We see a lot of different utilities and countries around Europe that are actually legislating today OpenADR 3.0 as the standard for connecting energy asset to the DSO. So in Europe, there is a very large legislation push for OpenADR. Some areas in US also operate under the OpenADR standards, but over there we see less than a regulatory push for standardization.
Okay, so we have several more questions that came in, and we do have time. So the next question is, does the data presented regarding demand charges and other operational factors that impact profitability? So data was presented about the EU. How do they compare to the numbers from for the US market?
So both in Europe and US, it really depends. So I would be we'd be able to set and explain more in a follow-up meeting if you're interested in specific geographies and analyze it for you. It really depends on the geographies. Some areas in the US already are experiencing a lot of surge in capacity increase, and these places are already actively pushing towards demand charges. And it also depends on the utility that you're connected through. So it really changes from area to area and from utility to utility, and we'll be able to discuss more. And we've actually went through a process with our charge point operators where we've analyzed together their utility bills. Sometimes the utility bills are quite hard to understand, not making it easy for you as a customer to see why is the billing cycle so high. We've seen very weird, for example, in Ireland, we've seen the demand charges used in kilowatt hours, even though it's measured in kilowatt, and we've learned together from a deep analysis that it's just a way for the utility to utilize the same invoice that is working in kilowatt hours and to manipulate the numbers somehow so it's shown in kilowatt hours, but actually the charges are measured in kilowatts, and then together we've helped the CPO, the charge point operator, to understand why these invoices are so high and how they should reduce it. So we've seen very different numbers in different countries, and we'll be happy to explain more.
Okay, and the next question here, this is might be a tricky one. And Matt is asking about a lower limit. Is there a lower limit on utilization under which using this kind of energy management solution is overkill? At what point is the utilization too low for the energy management to really be effective? I think that's the question.
Actually, when you look on low utilization numbers, there's a very high risk if you don't control the costs. So like I just shared in the example, the site that I've just shared is not a heavily utilized site, and there are sporadic peaks. Let's say there are 4 ports in the site, and no one is using, the CPO is not using energy management. Then there is no protection on your electricity bill from, let's say, if there's just one time during the months that 4 BMWs connected to all the ports together because they can actually take all the power that the charge point can offer, then you will be charged during that month on a heavy demand charges. So actually, when we're looking into low utilization sites, that's a very good option for optimization for profitability. And there are additional options also for high utilization sites.
Okay, and now we've got a question in the chat window, and I guess really to answer this one, I'm going to share my screen again. And the question is where you can get more information about the relationship between using our EMS with a CPMS that is not Driivz, how they work together, pricing and features. And I really think that's a question that we need to take online. And you should see on your screen right now our contact email, contact us at driivz.com. Just reach out to us at that email and we'll get back to you with that one. And let's see if there's anything else here. So here's another question. Avram, do you have can you share any of the V2G pilots that we're currently running? Any of the pilots that you mentioned, Avram? Maybe without mentioning specific names, but be giving an example or two of what kind of V2G pilots we're running.
Right.
If I can,
So
yeah, go
go
for it,
ahead,
Abba.
Gal. Yeah,
So
so
we're fighting over it.
unfortunately, we cannot share the exact partnerships that we're having, but those are pilots using the most advanced OCPP basically protocol to showcase the opportunity to use V2G. And basically what we are showing is different use cases that will actually allow I'm not exploding anything, utilities having control over those limitations. So that really can assist further in congested areas. So this is just a glimpse of that, but I think that that's what we can expose without going further into the details.
And there's a question here about costs. We did talk about reducing costs, and so someone is asking about operating costs for a battery. How much does it cost to operate these batteries for maintenance and services in terms of euros per year or per kilowatt hours, for example? What are the costs?
So I don't have the exact number, obviously, but I can tell you that most of the manufacturers would not have such an extensive maintenance program for batteries, as usually it requires to handle not the batteries themselves, rather an air condition, filters. Those are the things that need to be changed in a battery during the years it's operating. Of course, there are some degradation mechanism on the cells, but as we learned in the last few years and also all the industry, are noticing basically that the degradation is not that high. If we are sizing the battery correctly to act on one cycle per day, that will basically hold for many years. And when I'm saying many, more than 10, 15, could be even 20. So it's depending on the sizing and then really the type of batteries, of course, but generally speaking, it's a low maintenance, and nowadays we see high performance from those batteries.
Okay, so I have a question now from someone who's very customer-centric or driver-centric, if you like. And I think if I understood the question correctly, Nicholas is asking, how do customers, I think he means drivers, take it if the CPO changes their prices from a flat rate to a time of use rate? How do they perceive it? How do they view it? Is it accepted? Is it, do they not like it?
It really depends. I think there are a few factors which might affect this kind of decision. One is the competition around that EV charging site. So if there's a very aggressive competition, it would be more difficult to apply a very high price that is not competitive. The second thing is it a guest driver or it's a returning driver that is used to a price and would be either more or less sensitive to price changes in their known EV charging site. There are a few more factors, but these are the two most important factors. So it really depends on how your EV site is located and who is charging.
I can also add that there is a study that shows reducing prices to promote off-peak charging, increased utilization by a much greater degree than the loss of the amount of charging in peak hours, so that the overall revenue that was gained from that site increased by promoting it and getting people to charge at off-peak hours.
I really agree with you, Rami. And there's additional market analysis that Bloomberg published that shows that the most important factor for charging is, of course, speed and then cost. And like you said, sometimes the margin that charge point operators actually make it into profit in the high time of use hours is not worth the actual high utilization in these hours. Sometimes it's worth increasing the utilization in the hours of the higher margin.
And I think it looks like we managed to get to all the questions. And we're just about getting to the end. So I think this is a great time to, first of all, thank Gal and Avram for the great presentations they made today. And to thank you, our audience, for joining us today. If you want to explore profitability through energy management at any time, don't hesitate to reach out to us. The email's there up on your screen. Contact us at driivz.com. And we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar, which we're planning towards the end of March. So see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.